record. Is it the recording now? I think it is. Okay, so welcome everybody to I guess this is gonna be the first Hack the Box session for this summer or not summer, fall. I was hosting them in the summer, and then I had something come up, but now we're gonna be back in session. We're gonna be starting off with starting point labs, which let's see. Hopefully I don't need to log in. I need to log in. Okay. Guess everyone's gonna find my email now and my terrible email practice naming practices. Okay, but anyways, we'll be starting off with something called the Starting Point Labs. If you guys log into your Hack the Box account, go on the left drop down menu. There's something called Starting Point. There's three tiers. Some of them machines. So these are all virtual machines that we're gonna be sort of trying to hack and stuff. Uh, let's see. So we're gonna have uh these machines. Some of them are VIP, but we don't need to do them. Most of these are good on their own. So this first tier is gonna be focusing on a lot of just like a bit of fundamentals and not so much quote unquote hacky stuff, because hacking sort of or like ethical hacking requires a good deal of like fundamentals in a bunch of different areas. So our goal is to like get through this tier 0 so then we can sort of get the ideas down, understand how to use commands, how to work with network scanning and some the basic stuff. Then once we get to tier 1, either next week or the week after, we'll be practicing more offensive techniques, and then tier 2 is going to be like a lot more difficult but a lot more rewarding too. I see a question asking why a VM is slow with 4 gigs and 4 of RAM and 4 cores. Uh, I don't think I mean, I think that should be fine. I gave mine 8 gigs of RAM and like 4 cores, but I'm
It could
pretty sure it
possibly
count.
be if there's too many other programs going on in the background that might be eating your RAM.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
Yeah, maybe try restarting and coming back to the presentation to see if it helps. I know that Zoom is also very hungry for RAM, so it could also be another thing. Also, Dylan, mind if I say hi just for a bit?
Oh yeah, sure, go for it.
All right, so hi everybody. You've probably heard me before, but just wanted to go and say hi because I'm the FAST president. If any of y'all have any questions regarding like any of our study groups here, this is the Hack the Box, the first, well, this is for the fall session at least, the first Hack the Box study session we'll be having. FAST also owns the official school account for Hack the Box. So we've been doing this for quite a while and I really appreciate seeing y'all here. This Hack the Box study group has been going on for at least 3 iterations that I know of. It was usually taken over by our e-board members. We've had a lot of FAST members even just come in and help. And I really, really do appreciate seeing y'all here and seeing y'all be active within all of the things that FAST offers. So if any of y'all ever have any questions about anything, feel free to always let me know. Feel free to go and let Dylan know. But Dylan here is really, really great for all the work that he does. And on behalf of the FAST e-board, we really do appreciate you stepping up to the plate to go and continue to help us.
Yeah, just if you ever have any issues with this sort of ethical hacking stuff, feel free to DM me. I like to do a lot of it, or at least like on a computer stuff or like ethical hacking with computers. That's what I mainly do on my free time. So feel free to DM me if you ever have any like sort of questions on that. I'm not too good with hardware and stuff at all because I don't know anything about hardware. But yeah. So uh hopefully we can all open up and access the starting point labs. Uh we'll be we'll be tackling like each box in specific order that they go in. I've already done them because a little while ago, but that's no problem. Once we open up this page, we're gonna need to VPN in to actually access these machines. So do that, you just hit the little connect button over here, and then it's gonna ask you on how you want to connect. So you just, for me, I like to connect with OpenVPN. The protocol doesn't really matter as much. I actually have an active box right now, so I should probably stop that. If you have an active box and it's just gonna, you can't really download the VPN profile. So let me just fix that real quick. So we're just gonna connect, hit the connect button, select VPN, and then just we could go with whatever options. They all just work. And you're gonna want to download it. I'm just gonna save. So after you save your VPN profile, you're gonna need to sort of run the run the VPN and use it to connect. So I'm just going to move uh, the VPN to my current directory. You guys might not have to do this, but I'm just gonna do that real quick. Kali downloads, and then it's called starting point. I'm gonna move it to my current directory, and I'm just going, all you have to do is run OpenVPN and then specify the path to the VPN. So when you open up your terminal, after you download the VPN, you're just going to need to run the OpenVPN command on Kali and then specify the path to the VPN. Since I moved my VPN to my current directory, all I have to do is just call it by name. So after that, you're just gonna run the command and you should be connected. And hack the box should be like showing something green. Maybe I need to refresh my page. Um, website's a bit slow sometimes. Oh yeah, so now it's green, so I know I'm connected to the VPN. Um, are we all together on this so far, or does anyone need any help with this? Uh, just connecting to the VPN. Yeah, it is not something really easy to get into, and I'm actually also considering doing some try hack me rooms too with you guys. It does take like a good deal of work and a lot of things to get used to, but once you get used to it for a bit, it becomes a lot easier, and then it gets hard again. But that's a part of the fun.
Oh yeah, I was just posting about just being respectful because like part of fast I think is always just trying to be inclusive of everyone and asking questions. We care mostly about learning the content and no matter what level someone starts at, I just want everyone to be respectful of one another because that's just a value that I'm gonna have everywhere in this club because I care about it.
Right. Feel free to always ask questions. The more you ask, the more you learn, and
Yeah.
the thing is
And
just
this is a
to
safe
always
space.
right. So don't worry about it. None of us judge here. We all want to try to help each other out.
Hi. I
Hello.
just joined like 2 minutes ago maybe.
Okay.
So would you mind like um say like what we're doing right now?
Okay, so this is a little Hack the Box meeting. Hack the Box is a website where you learn ethical hacking, right? So we're all just here to meet together to try to learn how to do this stuff together. So right now, if you have a Kali VM, which I linked in the announcement, you could log on to create an account and access their labs, which is on the left over here, the starting point labs. And we're gonna be trying to go through these labs so that we can learn the basics and eventually like more common and effective hacking techniques. Okay. 4 VM cores should be fine. You just want to make sure that you don't give it well, I don't know how true this is, but this is the rule of thumb I usually follow, and I try not to give it more. I try not to give it more than half of my host computer's resources because I heard that can create a bottleneck and becomes less effective. So for me, I usually try to stay around like 4+ gigs of RAM and 2 to 4 CPU cores. Let's see. Are we all connected to the VPN so then we can take this, or does anybody need some help with the setup? Gotcha. Okay. Once you close the VM, your computer, yeah, that's usually how it works. If it doesn't, then there's something really weird going on. But once you close the VM, all your computer should get those resources back, so that should be fine. Okay. All right. So after you guys connect to the VPN, the last like sentence in the log or the last line in the log should say something like initialization sequence complete. And if you really want to check if you're like actually connected to the VPN, I believe you could do something like IP adder ton zero. Oh yeah, okay, so IP adder show ton zero. Okay. Oh, to run it, um, what you do is you run the open VPN command in the terminal, and then you specify the path to uh, the location of your VPN. Your VPN is probably, if you haven't moved it, it's probably in your downloads folder. So you could do something like OpenVPN home/Kali downloads with a capital D because Linux is case sensitive, and then type in ST for, and then you can press tab and it'll probably autocomplete because you can do tab autocomplete and it's pretty convenient. Are you connected to the VPN? Okay, gotcha. So to show if you want to make sure that you are connected to the VPN, you could run the command. I'll just send in the chat. IP adder show ton zero. Ton zero is the like the network interface for the VPN. So if it shows like an IP address and it says that it's if it shows something like this, you're probably connected. Uh oh wait, what? Your VPN aired out or wait, that's weird. Can you copy and paste the error in the chat so I could take a look at it? Uh, okay. For those who are connected to the VPN, oh wait, okay, gotcha. To copy in Linux, by the way, you have to do like you highlight and you have to do like Control Shift C. It's a bit weird, but that because in like Linux term or for a lot of terminals and stuff, Control C means to like kind of like cancel or break whatever program is currently running. So you have to do Control Shift C to copy. Once you're connected to the VPN though, you can just hit the spawn machine button and it'll create an instance of that machine in a bit. It'll say it's active and all that. Oh, the clipboard doesn't transfer from. Oh, that's that's okay. I know mine does. I forgot what I did to set it up though. It was a long time ago. But you said there's a fatal error with your VPN after you downloaded it. Can you type the command that you wrote in the chat? Um, network un network unreachable. Can your VM hit the inner? Wait, no, Your VM can hit the internet, right? Because you downloaded the VPN from Hack the Box, so it should be able to hit the internet. Generic. Okay, yeah. Let me just um maybe, yeah. Maybe if you just try switching VPN servers when they give you the option. That's usually not an issue for me, but I mean, I guess something's just happening. Maybe you can try US starting point one because that one's working for me right now. And I think I was doing it over UDP actually. So you could try this profile and it might work. Well, hopefully anyways. Is that the same server that you were using? Okay, yeah, no, that that is funky. Uh, if you open up like a new terminal window though, and you do the IP adder show ton zero, does it show that you have like an IP address? Gotcha. Okay. Um. Oh, yeah. So once we're connected to device tons. Okay. Yeah. So you normally you'll have like, oh well, normally you'll have two interfaces. You'll have like your local host and some like sort of Ethernet connection. So I don't know why your thing is broken. I'll be honest. I've never ran into that sort of error before. Uh yeah, so we could try to yeah, okay. You could try that. Once we have the machine spun up, uh an IP address should show. That's going to be the IP address of the box. So one thing we could do, this isn't completely foolproof, but it works a lot of times. We can try to ping the box to see if it responds to us. So I'm gonna type ping and then the IP address of the box. So then I'm gonna send it some pings, and I can see I'm getting responses. It says 64 bytes from the address, so that's how I know I'm getting a response, and I'm like able to hit the box. I could just press Control C to stop that whole ping program from running. And to complete each of these labs, we're gonna have to answer like a series of questions that are both like stuff that we can Google online and stuff that we'll be able to answer by completing the box essentially. So the first task is what does the acronym VM stand for? So does anybody actually know what VM stands for? I think I might have said it a few times here. Yeah, it stands for virtual machine. Uh, it's really nice to be able to use a virtual machine because you can have like an isolated environment for doing stuff like, pen testing like we are now, or if you're into program development or malware analysis, you could isolate all that stuff within the VM, which is pretty nice and convenient. What tool are we using to issue commands through command line? I feel like I also said this one a few times. People call it like a console or shell a lot, but there's like the third term is the answer to this one. Yeah, it's the terminal. You can see here it's a, I mean, this one's called Q terminal, but like for the most part, it's commonly just called like the terminal, the command line, CLI. It's like all the same thing, or the shell too. So yeah, the answer is terminal. Good job. Um, so what service or program are we trying to use to form a VPN connection? It worked for me. For it seems like it's not working for some of you guys, but uh, what was the program or the service that we're using to actually get that VPN connection so we can hit these boxes?
OpenVPN.
Yeah, we're using OpenVPN. It's also the name of the executable that we're running. Uh, Pretty sure it's like its own little company or something like that. But yeah, we're using OpenVPN to do that. Um, a lot of OpenVPN files have um, like the file extension OVPN. File extensions, at least in Linux, don't actually really matter all too much. They're sort of a naming convention. But in the case of Windows, file extensions are pretty important. VPN profiles look very weird. Um, let's see. So this is a little bit of a weird question, but what's the abbreviated name of the tunnel interface um that we get when we successfully VPN in? So like if we do IPA, I mean for me I have a lot of interfaces, but these are all different network interfaces. Each of them are used to connect to like a sort of different network. So what is the name of the network interface that we get from VPNing in? As a hint, it's one of the ones on my screen right now. I also have like a lot of weird ones. Um, well, the answer is just ton zero. That's the thing I was saying earlier. Um, or well, it's ton. Zero is just mean because the way it works, to my understanding, is when you VPN in, you're gonna get a ton, which stands for like a tunneling interface, and for every like additional one, the number is gonna increment. So since I have one VPN connection, that's gonna be under ton zero. If I were to make a second VPN connection to something else, it'd probably be ton one. And I think ton is just for short for tunnel. Um, what tool do we use to test connected status report?
Ping.
Yeah, ping. I don't know what status report is, but it is ping. Ping uses something called like ICMP. I download another VPN with the other pro that refused to work, uh so the machine is running, but you're not but can you hit it with yeah, it lets you answer the question. Can you hit the machine with like a ping though? Or like as we said, yeah. So ping is a way to test connectivity through something called an ICMP protocol. There are different sort of networking protocols like TCP, UDP, but there's also things that work on a higher level or lower level. ICMP is another sort of like protocol. In It's commonly used for or like usually I just refer to it as like ping. Uh, Now if you get ping response back, then you can guarantee like, okay, yeah, I can actually hit the machine because it's responding back to me. Sometimes pings might be firewalled. I think they are by default on Windows, which makes it a bit tough because a machine might respond to other protocols, but like they block ping. So it's not a foolproof way to test connectivity, but it's like a good thing to check just to see like, oh, can I? It's like an easy way to check, but it's not completely guaranteed to work or be accurate. But if it does show, then you can hit the box at least through ICMP. Now, does anyone know this one? So what is a common tool that we use to find ports on a target? And for reference, Wireshark. I wouldn't say you can find open ports on a target because Wireshark intercepts network traffic and lets you see where traffic is coming to and from your point of reference. But if traffic never goes to a certain port, then you wouldn't know then um if traffic never reaches a certain port, then you wouldn't know if that port's open or not. It could be open, but just not receiving traffic. So like Wireshark can find open ports by intercepting traffic, but it's not like I would say it's not a like a efficient way to go about it. Oh yeah, ping didn't work. That's unlucky. Sorry about that, Joshua. I can get back to you later if you need some more help with setting this up. Let's see. You can see how on the word is. Yeah, Nmap. Exactly. Right. That is the yeah. So Nmap is a port scanning tool. A lot for us though, we like to use it because as an attacker, ports are our way into the target. Yeah, Google is like your best friend when it comes to this stuff. I think like I don't know a lot of things, but I know how to Google. So by extension, I know a lot of things. That's usually how this usually go around this stuff. Nmap is a port scanner, so it'll try to manually scan and hit each port on a computer uh, to see if it's accessible. So, whereas Wireshark just sees where certain communications are going, Nmap goes out itself to manually reach out and see what's accessible. And this is good for us because ports, um, they're our way into a computer. So whenever an application needs to do something on a network level, it's going to need to utilize a port. And because it's utilizing a port, we can use that as our way to get in. If a computer has like no ports open at all whatsoever, we're not going to be able to access it on a network level. So we would have to physically try to figure out how to get in. But that's not my specialty. I focus on doing things on a network level. So when I see ports are open, that's a good sign for me. And usually things will always have ports open. For example, if I run this command, you guys don't need to know this one, but on Linux, right? If I run this netstack command, I could see I have a ton of ports open. I have like all these 7,000s. Um, I have this 7,000 here. I have 80 here, some 5,000s, and a bunch of things. And if I were to nmap my own machine, uh, oh man, VM issues are annoying. I can try to help figure that out later though. But yeah, I've VMs usually don't break like that, but I don't know what's going on. I'm not a VM specialist or anything. I kind of just run the VM and it works. If I were to run Nmap on my machine, I could see like there's a bunch of ports open, and Nmap tries to identify them, which is really convenient. Um, Now this is just a basic Nmap scan. All you have to do is do Nmap and specify a target either by its host name or its IP address, right? And it's gonna go ahead and try to scan for whatever ports that it can. Uh, it'll also tell you what protocol they're associated with. By default, Nmap is gonna work with the TCP protocol, and I could see I have a bunch of ports open. Uh, and if if I don't specify anything, Nmap is gonna try to do like a default mapping of these ports to services because there's a lot of ports will come or a lot of like services and protocols will commonly use a specific port. Like HTTP is nearly always on 80. HTTPS is nearly always on 443. Sometimes something called a HTTP proxy will be on 8080. So Nmap tries to identify or like by default lists that. If I actually want to run a more detailed scan, I could do something called TAC SBC. So I like to call these little TAC things, these are called flags. And so you could specify flags to add additional things to most of commands that you run in Linux. In particular, the TAC SBC in that order and in that casing will it will run a more detailed scan by adding extra scripts and trying to identify the services rather than just assuming that they fall under like the default uh proto or default stuff that run on that. port. So I'll just send that command here. Target. So you just do nmap, specify your flag, and then put the target that you want. In this case, I'll do localhost for reference, and it's gonna take longer because it's gonna try to do it detailed. But as a result, the information is more helpful for me. Attack NVs. I have not tried the N flag. Uh, let's see. So I'm gonna try to look at all the nmap flags. I'm not familiar with all of their flags. I've usually just used S. Okay, I so I don't actually know, and I'll try to figure that out actually, because uh wait, S you said SCV. So SCV is going to okay, I guess that works too. My bad. Because this is just like I'm actually combining two flags. There's a SC which does like a script scan, I believe, and SV which does a service version check to my understanding. And I accidentally found out that you can combine the two, so that's just kind of what I've been doing. So that usually for me, I just say like SBC, but I think SCV actually works too. So yeah, I was not aware of that, but that's interesting to know. And dang, this nmap scan is taking a long time. Sudo rmrf. That's not a bad command unless you do it on your root directory, because then that's going to delete your whole file system. So as long as you just don't run that on your root directory, you'll be chilling. Yeah, this nmap scan is going to take a while. You can add an additional flag to speed up nmap scans. It's the min rate flag. This makes it go faster, but it's gonna also potentially miss out more details. I like to do min rate and some number between 1,000 and 5,000. But yeah, the faster you scan, faster results, but you might miss something. So sometimes it's good to do multiple scans. Anyways, I'm gonna cancel this scan. It's taking very long time. So now I'm gonna just run nmap sbc on our target. So I'm gonna copy their IP address. And I'm just going to speed it up a bit. Min rate 2000. I don't know what the default min rate is. So I just know that some number between 1000 and 5000 usually works out for me. So if I'm just going to run this, and hopefully it doesn't take too long. There's a lot of other vulnerability scanners out there. Nmap is just a really small, lightweight one that's pretty simple to use. There's a lot of like bigger tools that other like enterprise level organizations will use. Like there's things called like Nessus and OpenBoss. If you want, you guys could try to figure out how to set that stuff up and try running those big scanners on your own host computer. I haven't personally tried that out. Anyways, it looks like our scan is back and we have a port open, and uh, Nmap managed to figure out what service and what service version it's running, which is pretty nice for us. And I believe that's actually the next question. What service is it running on that port 23 on the TCP protocol? I mean, based on Nmap, the service is going to be Telnet, which I believe is actually the answer to this one. So now we know that there's a port running with an open port with a specific service, but how do we actually interact with this? Does anyone have an idea of how we might be able to interact with this service? I have no idea what launch virus exe even is. Launch virus. What is that? I got no idea. So because we scanned this target port with Nmap and it managed to find that they have port 23 open or at least open to us, which means that we're able to interact with it because Nmap tries to reach out and connect to ports. It managed to connect to 23, so Nmap is telling us that okay, port 23 is open on, or at least the TCP port 23. There's 65,000 ports on TCP and UDP. But either ways, Nmap found out, okay, port 23 on the TCP protocol is accessible to us. But now, okay, now that we know that, how can we actually make a connection to that port though? Like, do you guys have any idea, like maybe what tools or anything we have like that? Well, okay, so there's no specific, it's hard to say like there's a specific tool or wait, let's see. You can upload stuff to CPP internet with SCP, at least. Yeah, so SCP uses something called the SSH protocol to do file transfers, and you can do that on uh, any sort of operating system that supports a tool that uses SCP. But for uh for Telnet in particular, there's an actual tool that exists to interact with Telnet. If I search up how to connect to Telnet, I can simply run the Telnet command, right? Telnet, the IP of the server, and then the port. So if I just run telnet this, and then the port is 23. Now telnet is a specific tool used for clients to connect to a telnet server. So in this case, this box that has telnet listening would be our telnet server. But as like an analogy, there's a lot of tools that we use like every day that act as a client tool to a server. For example, my web browser is a tool for the client to connect to a web server. In this case, the web server I'm on is hackthebox or like hackthebox.com or whatever. And that's going to be running HTTPS, so it's probably port 443. So there's a lot of different tools to client tools to interact with a server. So in this case, for a telnet server, we can use the telnet command, and for web servers, we can use a web browser. So I'll um, just connect to the server like that. So I'll just run telnet IP address port of telnet service. And it's gonna prompt me with a login. Now, telnet is actually it was it's like a remote way to communicate with computers. In the past, it was used to do remote logins, but because it does everything completely unencrypted, people were like, wait, that's a bad thing because when you type in passwords or everything over an unencrypted network, if someone's just listening in between using something like Wireshark, they could just see everything that you send over. I believe I can actually demonstrate that over here. Just gonna run Wireshark for reference. But anyways, now we have a login page. So with a little bit of ethical hacking in mind, what are some, if we see a login page, what are some like, oops, it timed out because I took too long explaining, but when we see a login page, what sort of like, usernames come into mind? Like what might we try to log in with if we don't know anything? So what's something that we can get? All right, we can try admin, and I get for a password we could guess anything, so maybe password. But we also have to remember, right? Uh, th where's my scan? Okay, this is running Linux telnet, so this is working with a Linux machine. So if it's running telnet on a Linux machine, what are some like some maybe Linux usernames that we might want to throw at this? So it seems admin's incorrect. And it says nothing. There's a login with no password. So if I put nothing, we'll see if that works. And then also I'm gonna set my Wireshark to listen. Yeah, so I got login incorrect. Kali. Now Kali is a specific user on for Kali Linux in this case, right? You can actually check all the users on your machine if you do something called cat etc password, right? The etc password holds all the users. The usernames are going to be on the left. So I have a user called root Damon. Okay, Ashley said root. Let's try root out, and my thing is dead. So I'm gonna have to reconnect. Root sudo. Sudo is I don't think it's a user, is it? Sudo is usually a group that has privileges, not necessarily like a group. Okay, so I'm gonna try root because root is oh yeah, root worked. Nice. So root is actually a um I don't know how long it's been, but like root is typically the administrative user. So on Windows you have admin, on Linux you have root. Root usually has now root is just the name of it. What actually matters is this zero and etc password. That stands for the user ID. Root the root user, at least to have root privileges, you need a user and group ID of zero. Uh, Everything else kind of doesn't really matter. All those numbers are kind of arbitrary, but zero is the important one because zero means like full power basically. Anyways, it looks like the root login worked, and that should be the answer to our next question. What username is able to log into Telnet with a blank password? We're able to do that with root. And for reference about the thing I was talking about Telnet earlier, let's see if I open up Wireshark, I could see, right, all the connections that I was doing over Telnet. I can see everything that was happening because Telnet's completely unencrypted. This is why Telnet kind of apparently isn't very isn't very used now. So if I do, I don't know, like who am I? Or if I read the the shadow file, which is where all the password hashes are stored, and if the attacker was listening on for my traffic, they could see everything that I was doing. I mean, it looks a little weird, but I mean, like you guys get the point. People were able to sniff a lot of free information. So that's why Telnet is no bueno anymore. But yeah, so we were able to figure out root logged in, and now we have to find something called the root flag. Uh, so a lot of these websites and even practical certification exams in ethical hacking, they use like a system called a flag. A flag is typically a file that contains some text. And if you're able to read that file with that text, it means you accomplished the objective because that text file or that flag file is usually only accessible by a specific user or a level of privilege. So in this case, the root flag is only accessible usually by the root user. So by being able to read it, which means you got root or you like compromised the system. So now we just have to submit it. Uh, Usually these are going to be held in the root directory or unless there's some other naming convention. So I could see here, right, if I ls the root directory, so slash for the root of the file system and then the actual root directory, I could see there's a flag.txt. Does anybody know how to actually read this file though? Yeah. So to open a file to read, there's actually a file called cat. I don't act does help actually well that's crazy. I didn't know there was a help command in Linux. That's crazy. But to read a file, you it's just you type cat I think it stands for concatenate, but I don't actually know. It might have like an actual usage, but it's like one of the most common things to read a file. You just do cat flag.txt, or you could specify the full path to the file. But since I'm already in the root directory, I could just say cat flag.txt. And after that, you just read the text and then submit the root flag. That should be this box. Uh, I'll post a flag in here for you, in case you guys are running into VPN issues and you couldn't like do this manually. You read download Kali VM and through a fatal error. You mind getting on Discord later so I could like, and can you screen share so I could see what's going on, because don't know what's really going on your end of things. It might be something small that we're overlooking. Okay, yeah, so that's the first box. And while it is pretty unrealistic to just have root access to a telnet server with no password, all of this is just, to get use of how to interact with services, how to scan for services, and how to test connectivity. But stuff like this actually exists out there. Uh, like a few years ago, somebody I knew ran a scan over the internet for telnet servers, and he found, I think he said like 30,000 telnet servers, and either they were open or they were already logged in as somebody just over the internet, and he was able just to like, I mean, he didn't do anything. I'm pretty sure what this person did, what he did was like sort of on the legal gray zone, which I'm not advocating for, but just like things like this do exist out there in the real world. It's kind of crazy. Anyways, uh, so that's that machine. That's Meow. Hopefully we all got all the tasks done and this box is completed, because we will need to complete all the free boxes if we want to be able to go to tier 1. So right now we're just getting used to how to interact with services, scanning with them, and all the basics. But once we get to tier 1, we'll be trying some fun offensive techniques. And then once we get to tier 2, it's gonna be like all hacking from there. Anyways, now we're going to be doing this one, fawn. Oh yeah, that is the answer. You just know that one. Has anyone here actually used FTP before? I've never heard of FTP until I started doing all this stuff. So I heard it was used, like some people use it for like video game servers or something, but I don't know. This thing's taking a while to load. What about the second question? Does anybody know? Okay, yeah, it is file transfer protocol. Torrent FTP servers. Ooh, FTP servers through torrent. I've never heard about that. That's interesting. I don't actually know how to torrent anything. I've never done that stuff before, but apparently I guess torrent can interact with FTP servers. But yeah, all of these are apparently technologies that exist somewhere out there in the world. I haven't run into them, but like I said with Telnet, I'm pretty sure FTP exists out there too. Does anybody know what port FTP usually will listen on? Torrenting is a great way to get a virus. I guess just downloading anything. Um, Downloading things is a good way to actually get viruses too. Or at least like suspicious downloads. I know I downloaded a virus recently, but I managed to recognize it and get rid of it before it could do anything. Port 21. Yep. FTP usually will run on port 21. Uh, So just like how Telnet's usually 23, SSH is 22, HEP is 80, Telnet, or I mean FTP is typically going to be 21. Does anyone know what yeah, it is SFTP. It is. Um I don't know if this is like a common thing, but a lot of like secure versions of software will just have an S in front of them. So secure FTP is SFTP. Secure shell is SSH. Um I can't think of any others off. Oh, HTTPS. Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure, I think. What does I'm pretty sure it's Transfer Protocol Secure. Let me just make sure. Yeah, secure. For some reason, he'll just slap an S on things and it just like secure. Command we can use it. Yeah, that one's ping. Good job, good job. Okay, now we're gonna have to let's start scanning our target now. I should probably. Oh wait, my terminal's frozen. We just fix that. Okay. So let's just rerun our nmap command on this box. Now, I'm pretty sure FTP is going to show up since all these questions ask about FTP. So yeah, no, what the heck? Yeah, I'm going to reset my terminal real quick. Yeah. So, looks like we have a FTP service. Okay. Based on our scan, what version of FTP seems to be running? Usually the service version is always just going to be on like the last column of that map scan, and that's some pretty cool stuff. Yeah, we have VSFTPD 3.0.3. So it's going to be VSFTPD 3.0.3. I believe that VS stands for very secure, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, very secure FTP daemon. Daemon's just like it's like a server sort of agent thing. Yeah, VSFTP 3.0.3. Ironically enough, there are vulnerabilities in VSFTPD. There was backdoor in the 2.3.4 version, so not everything might always be secure, even if it's in the name. Just funny stuff like that. Anyways, um, it's running Unix. Yeah, looks like Unix to me. I mean, it says OS Unix. Pretty sure Unix is the answer. Yeah, nice. Uh, let's see. What command do we need to run to do? So yeah, it's probably FTP attack H. Usually a lot of that's weird though because it says invalid option. Yet it says displays a help menu. I feel like if I were to just like put a random option here, it would still yeah, that's weird. If you just put invalid option, it brings up the help menu. Yeah, I don't know. Um typically tag H stands for help, but in this case, it's an invalid option and it prints the help menu if you put something invalid. So I guess it gets the job done. But yeah, so I mean, spoiler alert, I guess. So we use Telnet to interact with the Telnet service, and we use web browsers to interact with web servers. And for FTP servers, we can interact with them with the FTP client or the FTP command. Yeah, I don't know. This is a funny answer because TAC-H doesn't. I mean, it brings up the help menu, but so does like putting anything invalid. Like if I put FTP, bruh, it'll still bring it up. So I don't know. Just funny stuff, I guess. But yeah. So in this case, we use Telnet to interact with Telnet. we can use FTP to interact with FTP. It's not always going to be like this, but for the most part, there are going to be a lot of like client tools that we need to be familiar with because as a pen tester, you'll run into a lot of different services and you have to understand how you can potentially interact with them so you can find the vulnerabilities. Or if you can't interact with them directly, maybe find something else that can interact with them. I think you can actually access FTP through your URL too. Uh, I'm not familiar with the syntax on that one. Uh, What is a username that you can log into with FTP without like actually an account? It's like a guest login. Does anyone happen to know it? As a hint, it showed up in the scan. So a lot of services will allow like a guest login, sort of like how your Windows computer may or may not have a guest user. Anon is close. Uh, FTP tac anon. I've not actually. Is that an actual flag or an actual command? Oh, wait, I've not tried this one. Oh, I don't know what Anon did, but it still appears that it wants me to log in. Anonymous, yes. It is the anonymous it is called anonymous FTP. So if I actually FTP in, now it's weird because FTP is very specific with this, right? If I say something like guest, right, it's gonna say, oh, password, right? And it's gonna tell me to cry about it. It's gonna say login incorrect. But if I say anonymous, and then I could specify anything as a password. I'm just gonna like type a bunch of random stuff. It's just gonna say login successful. Um, I don't know if it's like at least to my understanding, it's at least a default setting. I don't know if you can change it, but anonymous is the guest user for FTP. So whereas other things may use guest or like user, FTP uses anonymous. And it's always good to test for anonymous login or guest logins on a lot of different services because people just love being lazy and uh just having like a universally accessible account with no authentication. Uh, but yeah, so we could see we logged in and FTP does a lot of like codes. I don't really know what each of the codes mean. Like 220 and then it shows the banner. 331 it's asking for the password. 530 it said my login was incorrect. So FTP deals in codes and so does your web browser, but that's another thing. So anyways, what is the response code for the login successful event? I mean, it's kind of on the screen right there, so I don't think that's really a question I need to be asking you guys. Literally just says 230. That's just gonna be 230. All right. So now we're not really in our shell anymore. We're in the FTP client. So just like how when we were in the telnet client, the commands we went got sent through the client and to the server. Uh, the stuff we send in here is not gonna get sent to the FTP server. So what are some commands that we might want to try running here? Because now we're logged in, but like, if FTP is like a way to share files, maybe like how can we list? Yeah, we're in the FTP client now. So, but now that we're in the FTP client, how can we like actually, do things in here? With Telnet, we were just logged into like a shell remotely, so that was simple enough. But what could we do within this FTP client? Yeah, we could try to steal files, but you know, right now we don't know what files are in here. So does anybody have an idea how we could figure out what files are in here? Yeah, we can run ls and we could see the flags actually in here. I think if we type help, it shows all the commands. I only know what like 5 of these do since I only use like 5 commands in here. But yeah, ls is one of them. It conveniently uses something similar to like Unix commands. Okay, so we have the ls command. So now we know that there's a flag in here. How can we actually like Now, how can we actually grab the flag and submit it? Because like, or at least like, if it's possible, we could also try to read it from the FTP client, but I don't know if that's possible. Well, they don't have mget, and we could try mget. Uh, I'll say mget and flag.txt. I have no idea what that is saying, so I'm just gonna hit enter, and it worked. Now, usually I use get, but I believe mget is like the recursive get command. Where's mget? Usually I just use get. Uh, I don't know what mget stands for, so I'll actually Google that mget FTP. Yeah, so it's like a way to transfer multiple files because with get you usually get one at a time. But yeah, mget works. Um, let's see. So if I ls here, I now have, yeah, actually, yeah, multiple get, that probably makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. But yeah, now we have a flag txt in here. And if I go back to Wireshark, because I forgot to turn this off, if I type in FTP, we can actually see all of our FTP traffic. FTP by default is kind of like Telnet. It's, um, it's all unencrypted, which I think is why FTP, let me see, which is why I think SFTP exists because it encrypts traffic, so it's harder for people to kind of figure out what's going on. So yeah, when I logged in as anonymous, this was actually the random password that I tossed in when I would just slap my hands on the keyboard. So no encryption, so you could clearly see what passwords are being sent over the wire. So that's all fun. Which is why things like SFTP exist. And same with actually HTTP too, is that all your web traffic is unencrypted if you're not using HTTPS. That could be potentially dangerous. But yeah, now we have our flag. We could just read it. I'll toss it in here if you guys, since some of you guys aren't actually like fully VPN'd in and all that. Here's this. One is okay. What is the well, we already went over this. We said, or Sarah said it was ls. So yeah, it was ls. And the command to download the file, we used mget, but you could just use get since it's one file. But if we wanted to grab everything, then mget would work really well. And then the root flag, I just sent it to you guys, so that's that. I didn't think we'd get over both of these, but looks like we did, so good job, everybody. Is everyone all together? Do I need to review anything? Is this all making sense? Because this is like a part of the little fundamentals, I'd say, just like getting used to interacting with um a service through like some sort of client tool and port scanning and figuring out how to use a client to interact with the server. Windows CMD. Yeah, I actually like CMD pretty well too. Yeah. Yeah, hopefully your VM gets to work soon too. Uh, I will say that if when you guys the more you get into pen testing, like you will be working a lot with the terminal, and that includes like the Kali, that involves like the Linux terminal if you manage to jump into a Linux machine, and then that also involves like Windows command prompt or even PowerShell too. All those skills are important, but like those are later down the line. Right now, we just gotta focus on how to like work with services, since for the most part, services are how we get in. Well, either that or phishing, but that's completely something else. If we want to get in through like a vulnerability, there needs to be an open port running a vulnerable service, for example. If there's no ports open, it's really hard to get in unless someone manually like acts or accidentally lets us in. like through phishing, or if we just plug in a USB with some malware onto the computer. Yeah, after the meeting, I was wondering if you could screen share in Discord so I could kind of see what's up with your VMs. I could hopefully figure out how to fix that. Oh, phishing is surprisingly effective. Uh, Phishing isn't always in scope for a pen test, but it is. Oh, yeah, there's some other cool phishing stuff too. Uh, if you guys are really into phishing, you guys could look into something called Evil Jinx. It is like it's like a very interesting tool that can be used to mimic a lot of login pages, so then you can steal credentials from people. Yeah, it's a the term is like man in the middle. Uh, anyways, I guess we're probably not gonna finish this one since we only have like what 18 or so minutes left. But this next box we're taking a little turn and we're gonna be working with Windows instead of Linux because if you look at the little icons on the bottom right, say Linux, but this one's gonna be Windows. Now I personally prefer Windows machines like 10, 15 times more than Linux for a lot of different reasons, but yeah. Windows just has a lot more vulnerabilities, especially on a corporate network, which is always fun to play around with. Linux is just it's just Linux. Maybe I know Linux is tied in a lot with the cloud, so if you understand a lot about cloud security, maybe you could find something out with that. But for the most part, Linux on its own is kind of just it's just that. So I don't know. But anyways, that's my personal bias. Man, these VMs take a while to boot up. Maybe we can answer some of these small task questions. Does anyone know what SMB actually stands for and maybe what it is? What it is? Yeah, it is server message block, but without the U at the end. Does anyone actually know what like SMB is? Sheet Music Boss. Isn't that like a YouTube guy? Pretty sure that is. It is, yeah, part of it is very similar to FTP. It is used as a file share, actually. Uh, Now the difference with FTP is like with FTP, you can FTP can have its own sort of like authentication in the sense that it's like, oh, you can have like specific FTP users and stuff, but with SMB, it uses specifically like your Windows account. So if you're connected to a domain, you might have to log into SMB with something called a domain account. And another thing with SMB is you could play there's a lot more fun Windows vulnerabilities, or not really vulnerabilities, but attacks that you can try around with SMB. SMB is very useful for an attacker. But that's some more advanced stuff. Uh, but yeah, SMB stands for server message block. Can share can share files with around the network. I believe printers can actually access it too. For our use case, it's gonna be very similar to FTP. You know, we can always try our anonymous logons to see if there's anything there. Uh, I have heard that in engagements before, that SMB has like people do put like passwords and sensitive stuff on SMB shares. Um, That's the term for them. FTP, we call them pull. SMB, they have like shares. The shares have folders and stuff. So people have put passwords and spicy stuff on the SMB share. So it is a pretty good place to look for valuable information. Do we need a VM for the Windows tax? Well, I was hoping that you guys were already using a VM by now, but for the Windows stuff, we're still going to be attacking a virtual Windows computer, so you could still stick to using your Kali. Uh, you don't need you technically don't need a VM to be doing all of this, but it makes things a lot easier, especially a Kali one, because Kali has a bunch of built-in tools, so you don't have to manually install and go through all that stuff. If you guys actually click on the top left of Kali, there's a whole bunch of tools. I haven't actually used the majority of these ones. I haven't really found a use case for them, but they exist. Anyways, does anyone know what port SMB usually operates in? Well, SMB usually uh one so it is 130 it's weird. SMB usually comes in a pair. Um I think it's called like DSC or DCE slash PC or whatever. Anyways, SMB usually comes in a pair with 139, but the SMB itself usually is port 445 on TCP. But not like 99% of the time, you're probably gonna see something like 139 or 135 or something like that with SMB. If you guys run this command on your Windows command prompt, and you guys like scroll to the top, you'll probably see that you also have like SMB running. You might get something that looks like, let me see, I could copy paste it. Like that's for my output, for example. Like I have something with SMB up and running. It's like a default thing for Windows, and I believe it's like always on. Pretty sure you could disable it, but it's kind of convenient to have it on if you want to share files around with other computers on your local network. Okay. Yeah, but yeah, it runs on port 445. So now I guess we have to start scanning this thing. So I'm gonna just do my usual nmap svc command, toss in the target address, speed up the rate so that it's a bit faster. Okay. Yeah. So it looks like they got all the ports I was talking about. They have 135, 139, and 445. So we have MSRPC, SMB, and just a bunch of weird Windows stuff. Whenever you see like these three ports together and the service version is Microsoft, like that's basically guaranteed you're dealing with a Windows machine if you don't know what the actual host you're attacking is. So let's see. What is the service name that showed up for port 445? Well, that's weird. I didn't actually get one for port 445. It's blank. But if I was to take a guess, I don't know. Oh wait, it might just be Microsoft. The service is probably this Microsoft DS. Let's see. Is that the answer? Yeah, I don't actually know what Microsoft DS stands for. I just know that this is usually SMB. Yeah, I have no idea what the DS or whatever is. Pretty sure there's a reason. That's not too important. As long as we just know it's SMB, that's enough. So there's a lot of different tools that interact with SMB. Directory service, maybe, might be directory services, since directory is like one way to say folder. So there's a lot of different ways to interact with SMB. I think there's like 3 or 4 tools I can name off the top of my head to actually interact with it. For now, I'll just stick with like basic one, which is called SMB client. I wonder if that shows up. How to access SMB from Linux. Yeah, so I guess that's like the most popular option is something called SMB client. I don't like to use this one all too much because it's a lot of typing. But how if we do something like SMB client, I mean it's probably not gonna do anything. It's gonna list a lot of options. Does anyone have an idea how we could potentially use it so we can list the stuff in the file share? Or not the file share, but how we can use this SMB client tool to list what's on the SMB server. So from a client standpoint, it's usually hard to make the server do something like that. Usually it's us trying to like run commands on the server, not necessarily telling the server to do something for us. Usually if we have control of the server, that's a bit concerning because control the server, since the server runs on the host, that usually might mean like we have a degree of control over the host. But for the SMB client tool, uh, okay. So for FTP, you can just connect to the FTP server. But for SMB, you can't just connect to the server. You need to specify a something called a share. If you don't specify a share, you won't be able to connect. So before we connect to the SMB server, we need to list the shares. So does anyone have an idea like what we could add to our SMB client command so we can actually see what shares there are so we can try to connect to them? There a flag for ls. Well, I wonder if tech H does help. Well, you have to do tech question mark. Well, there is a lot of flags, but there seems to be a tech L flag. So we can try SMB tech L. Let's just put the IP address of this box we're dealing with. It's gonna ask for a password, but we don't know anything, so I'm just gonna hit enter. And it looks like we have some shares. So the answer to this one is actually TAC L. Now, the reason why I don't like SMB client all too much is, I mean, it lists the shares, but I don't know what sort of access I have to them. So one command that I like to run is I actually like to use a tool. It's called crack map exec. Uh, it's default available on Kali, and uh, it can list shares for us if we tell it to, which is pretty nice and convenient. So I'm going to try to do a no logon, and it gave me an access denied. The weird thing with Windows is there's something called a no logon and there's something called a guest logon, and they are two different things. So it's always good to make sure that to check both. I don't actually really know what the difference aside from the username is. But yeah, because in Windows there's something called anonymous and there's also something called guest. So as a pen tester, it's always good to make sure that both are either enabled or disabled because that could be potentially dangerous. I'll send the command in the chat if you guys want to try running it yourselves. I'll just modify the actual IP address. But yeah, and the thing I like about CrackMap is it actually tells me I can read this share, I can read and write to this share. Because if I can't read the share, then I can't connect to it. But so I would end up just like trying each one and failing until I get one that works. Whereas for this one, I already know which ones probably work and which ones don't, so that's pretty convenient. Oops. Um, the how many shares do you guys see? Yeah, there's four. That's probably the answer. Now, three of these are actually default. The admin share is going to be the if in your on every Windows computer, there's like a Windows directory like C colon backslash Windows. That's actually where admin is. And to have access to the admin share, typically you need admin access. The C share is I think it's either I forgot, it's the C share of system 32 or let me see. No, the C share is the C drive root directory. So this one is going to be the basically the root directory on the C drive of the Windows. I don't know what IPC is. I kind of forgot. I think it stands for inter-process communication because SMB is used for more things than just transferring files. Uh, and then we have a custom one called work shares. So because these are default, we're not really as interested in them because usually they're already secured in their own right, and usually people don't uh people make insecure configurations. They don't change the defaults into being insecure. So these are like low on the priority. But since this one we have read and write access to, we might want to check it out. So how does anyone have an idea of how we might be able to check it out? Yep, let's see. SMB client, how to connect to share. So there's an actual command. Uh, let's look at this one. Maybe this one is gonna be nice to us. So it looks like to connect to a share, we do SMB client and then we specify 4 backslashes, the IP address or host name, and then 2 backslashes and then the share name. So if I do something like this, what's the IP? This, and then work shares. I don't think it's case sensitive on Windows, right? And I enter a blank password because we're trying to do a little guest login, and I can see that I might be in because this time it didn't air me out. So if I try something like ls or help, it looks like we have access to this SMB share. And do you guys want to keep going or cut it off now? Because it is already 3:30. So if you guys have something to attend to, then you guys can feel free to leave. But if anybody wants to keep going for a bit, then we could keep going because we're almost done with this one. Oh, and we managed to access the work shares one without blank password. And it looks like we only have 2 more tasks, so we can keep going. Anyways, any idea how we could potentially grab some files, just like how we did on FTP? I already listed a help menu, so and listed the direct like the folders and files in here. So yeah, we could try get. So I'm gonna try to get amy.j, but amy is a directory s copy. Wait, I don't know what scopy does. I want to try it out. Okay, it looks like scopy copies a file from the share to our host, I think, and it's detecting Amy.j as a directory. Yeah, that's fine. Um, so maybe this time we could try using something like mget, and to specify everything, I'm gonna do a wildcard. Because wildcard typically means like anything. So I'll just run the mget command, and it's gonna cry about it. So unlucky. So instead, I'm just going to go into each directory individually and look for stuff. So I'm gonna list, and I'm gonna change directories, and I'm just gonna get these work notes, and I'm gonna go to James. I'm gonna get the flag. Now, a little cheat we could do here is if we typed in prompt off and then recurse on and then do mget wildcard, I'm pretty sure that's just gonna grab every single file in this share. Yeah, it's a little fun thing you could do. I'll just type it in chat. Prompt off, recurse on, mget wildcard. And this lets you grab every single file in the share. Pretty convenient when there's a lot of files, but there's only two here. So now if I just read the flag, there we go. And then command was get. Yeah, that's this one. So very similar for the most part to FTP. It's just the only difference really is like we have to find out shares and see if we have access to the shares first before we can actually connect. Whereas FTP, you just try to authenticate and you either have access or not. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Well, I'll end the meeting here, then, or recording here. I'll stick around for a bit if anybody has any questions or comments. Just stop the recording.